I spent 31 years as a family court mediator. I sat across from people on the worst days of their lives. I listened to things that would make most people leave the room. I learned to keep my hands still and my voice even when everything inside me was screaming. I never thought I would need that training for my own family. My daughter's name is Claire. She was 26 when she met my son-in-law. I'll call him Marcus. He was 30, a project manager at a construction firm, broad-shouldered, easy smile, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order the second time he met you. He called me ma'am the first time, and mom by the fourth visit. I noticed that. I told myself it was warmth. Claire had always been the kind of person who lit up a room without trying. She laughed loudly. She argued about things she believed in. She called me 3 times a week just to talk. After she met Marcus, the calls became once a week. I told myself that was normal. New relationship. New life. I told myself a lot of things in those early months. They dated for 2 years and got engaged on a Tuesday. She called me from the parking lot of a restaurant, crying, breathless, happy. I cried with her. I meant every tear. The first time I met Marcus's mother, her name was Sandra, I was standing in Claire's kitchen helping prepare a welcome dinner. Sandra arrived 45 minutes early. She walked through the front door without knocking, set her purse on the counter I had just wiped down, and looked around the kitchen with the particular expression of a woman taking inventory of everything she planned to rearrange. She said, "I hope you're not making that pasta dish. Marcus doesn't digest cream sauces well." I turned around slowly. I smiled. I said, "It's lovely to finally meet you, Sandra." She did not say it was lovely to meet me. I watched her that evening. She sat at the head of the table, though it was Claire's table. She interrupted Claire 3 times in the first hour. Not rudely, exactly. She had the skill of making interruptions sound like enthusiasm. She would lean forward, touch Marcus's arm, and redirect the entire conversation toward him before Claire had finished her sentence. Marcus never noticed. Or if he did, he didn't correct it. After dinner, when Claire and I were in the kitchen washing up, she said to me quietly, "She's a lot, I know." I asked her how long it had been like that. She looked at the window over the sink instead of at me. She said, "She means well." That was the first time I heard those words. It would not be the last. They were married 11 months later. Small ceremony, outdoor venue. Claire wore her grandmother's pearl earrings. She was radiant. I stood at the edge of the reception watching her dance, and for a few hours I let myself believe that what I had seen in Sandra was just first impression friction, the kind of thing that smooths out over time. It did not smooth out. The first year of their marriage was what I now think of as the softening period. I didn't have a name for it then. I only knew that Claire began to seem quieter each time I saw her. Not sad, exactly. More like someone who had learned to take up less space. She stopped arguing about things she believed in. She started sentences with, "Marcus thinks," and "Marcus prefers," where she used to start them with, "I think," and "I want." I noticed. I didn't say anything. She was a grown woman in a marriage. I knew my place, but I kept notes. That is something 31 years of mediation will teach you. Not because I was looking for problems, but because I had seen enough to know that when you sense something is wrong and say nothing to yourself, the memory becomes unreliable. The notes were just dates and details. Nothing dramatic, just what I saw. 8 months into the marriage, Claire stopped coming to Sunday dinners alone. Marcus came every time, which in itself was fine, but Sandra began calling me on Saturday evenings the night before, suggesting dish ideas, not asking, suggesting, with the specific tone of a woman who considers a suggestion and an instruction to be the same thing. I made what I wanted. I kept my voice pleasant. Then one Sunday, Claire arrived without her jewelry. She had always worn a small gold necklace her father gave her before he passed. She had worn it every single day for 11 years. I noticed it was gone but said nothing at the table. Later in the kitchen, I asked her about it gently. She said Marcus thought it looked dated. She said it like she was agreeing with him, but her hand went to her collarbone where it used to sit. I wrote that down when I got home. The second year is harder to describe because the changes were smaller and faster. Claire's laughter, when it came, had a new quality to it, like someone laughing in a room where they'd been told to keep the noise down. She stopped calling to just talk. When she did call, she gave me updates, almost like reports. She told me about Marcus's promotion, Marcus's new truck, a trip they were planning that Sandra had apparently organized. I asked her once directly if she was happy. She said, "Of course I am." Why would you ask that? The way she asked why told me more than her answer. Sandra, during this time, had settled into a comfortable pattern of making herself the center of her son's marriage. She texted Marcus throughout every family dinner. I watched him check his phone 5, 6, 7 times during a meal. Claire never commented on it. I think she had learned not to. The dinner where everything changed happened on a Saturday in March. Sandra had proposed a family dinner at Claire and Marcus's house. I was invited. Claire had spent 2 days preparing. I arrived early to help her, and I could see in the way she moved through her own kitchen, double-checking everything, repositioning dishes, that she was bracing for something. Sandra arrived with Marcus's younger brother and his wife. She also brought a dish of her own, without being asked, setting it on the table with the particular ceremony of someone making a statement. Dinner began. Claire had made roasted chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. It was a beautiful meal. She had worked hard, and it showed. Halfway through, Sandra looked at the chicken and said, in a conversational tone that carried to the whole table, "Marcus, you remember how Mom used to make this before it got dry?" The table went quiet. Claire's hand stopped moving. I looked at Marcus. He looked at his plate. He said, "Mom," but it was the voice of a man issuing a warning he didn't intend to enforce. Sandra smiled and kept eating. I watched Claire carefully after that. She picked up her fork. She continued eating. She did not look at me. She had learned by then to fold herself inward and keep her face still. The skill of it broke my heart. Then Marcus's sister-in-law made a comment about the bread, laughing, saying she preferred Sandra's recipe. It was a small comment. Thoughtless, probably. But Marcus laughed at it. He laughed, and something in Claire's face changed. Not dramatically, just a small collapse behind her eyes. She stood up quietly and said she was going to get more water from the kitchen. I stood up at the same time. I said I would help her. In the kitchen, she stood at the sink with her back to me and her shoulders very still. She didn't say anything. I came to stand beside her. I didn't touch her. I didn't speak immediately. After a moment, she said, very quietly, "I keep trying." I said, "I know you do." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were dry, but only because she had practiced being dry-eyed in that kitchen. She said, "Tell me it gets better." I had spent 31 years never lying to people in pain. I was not going to start with my daughter. I said, "I think we need to talk. Not tonight, but soon." She nodded. She filled the water pitcher. She walked back out to her table and smiled at her guests. I sat back down. I looked at Sandra. Sandra was laughing at something Marcus's brother had said. She was comfortable. She was completely, entirely comfortable in my daughter's home, at my daughter's table, having just watched her son ignore his wife's humiliation. I finished my dinner. I helped clear the dishes. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table and I opened the notebook I had been keeping for a year and 8 months. I read through every entry, and then I made a plan. I need to explain something about my work. In 31 years of family court mediation, you develop relationships with attorneys who specialize in protective orders, with therapists who work specifically with coercive control cases, with advocates at domestic violence organizations who understand that abuse does not always arrive with bruises. Sometimes it arrives with small erosions, a necklace taken, a laugh at the wrong moment, a dinner table where a woman has learned not to speak too loud in her own home. I had recognized what was happening to Claire for months, but recognition is not enough. What I needed was for Claire to see it herself. because I had watched enough cases to know that a woman who is pushed toward the exit by someone else will often walk back in. A woman who finds the door herself will not. The first thing I did was call a therapist I had worked alongside for many years. She specialized in exactly this. I did not call to make an appointment for Claire. I called to ask for guidance. How do I reach her? How do I open the door without making her feel like the door is being opened for her? She gave me language. She gave me patience. She told me the most important thing I could do was ask questions and wait. The next Sunday, I called Claire and asked if she wanted to have lunch, just the two of us. She said yes, but in the way people say yes when they are slightly surprised to be asked. We sat in a small restaurant we used to go to when she was in college. I ordered what I always ordered. She looked at the menu for a long time. I asked her casually how she had been sleeping. She looked up. She said, "Why?" I said I had been thinking about her lately. I asked if she felt like herself these days. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I don't know what that means anymore." I kept my hand still on the table. I said, "What did it used to mean?" She talked for 2 hours. I asked questions and I listened. I did not name what I was hearing. I did not diagnose or explain or frame it. I just let her hear herself talk about her own life. By the end of lunch, she was not crying. But she was very still. The way people get still when they have heard something from their own mouth that they weren't expecting. She called me 4 days later and said she thought she wanted to talk to someone, a professional, someone outside the family. I told her I might know someone. I gave her the name. The next 2 months were not linear. She went to 3 sessions and then skipped 2. She had a week where she called me every day and a week where she didn't call at all. Marcus noticed she was in therapy and did not react well, though he did not forbid it directly. He worked around it. He scheduled things during her appointment times. He was tired on the evening she came home from sessions. He needed things from her on those particular nights. I documented what she told me. With her knowledge, I explained to her why. She understood. The moment that shifted everything happened on a Wednesday evening. Marcus came home from a work function where Sandra had been present. He came home in a mood I will not detail because it is not mine to detail. What I will say is that Claire called me at 11 o'clock at night, and I listened to what she told me, and I stayed on the phone with her for an hour. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to the attorney I had worked alongside for 18 years, a woman who handled exactly this kind of case, who understood the legal architecture of what Claire would need. The second call was to Sandra. I want to be precise about that call because it matters. I did not yell. I did not threaten. I did not perform. I had written down what I was going to say before I dialed, the same way I used to prepare for the hardest mediation sessions. I told Sandra calmly that I was aware of the pattern of the last 3 years. I told her that I had documentation. I told her that her son's behavior had crossed a line that I was no longer willing to observe in silence. I told her that if she had any influence over her son, which I believed she did, the time to use it was now. Sandra told me I was a dramatic old woman who had never understood her son. I said, "All right." I thanked her for her time. I ended the call. I called the attorney back and told her to proceed. I will not describe the legal process in detail because it was Claire's process, not mine. What I will say is that she was brave in ways I could not have scripted. She spoke clearly. She brought her own records of things she had begun writing down after our lunch. She had been watching herself quietly for 2 months, and what she saw was enough. Marcus's attorney tried several angles. Sandra made calls to mutual contacts suggesting I had interfered in a private marriage. A woman from their church called Claire and encouraged her to try harder. Claire did not try harder. She moved forward. The legal proceedings concluded 4.5 months after that first phone call. I will not reduce what happened to simple terms because it was not simple. But the outcome protected my daughter. She moved into an apartment in March. I helped her carry boxes on a Saturday afternoon. She brought almost nothing from the house they had shared. She said she wanted new things in new spaces. On the first morning in her apartment, she called me at 7 a.m. She said, I slept the whole night. She said it the way someone says a thing they didn't know was possible until it happened. She is in therapy still. She calls me 3 times a week again, sometimes 4. She laughs the way she used to, from her whole chest, without checking herself. She started running in the mornings, something she hadn't done in years, and she texts me her mileage sometimes with a small emoji, nothing elaborate, just a quiet proof of herself. Last week she came for Sunday dinner. She arrived in the necklace her father gave her. She saw me notice it. She didn't say anything about it. She just reached up and touched it once, lightly, and then sat down. We ate. We talked. We stayed at the table long after the food was gone. I have been asked by people who know what happened whether I feel guilty for intervening, whether I crossed a line a mother shouldn't cross. I spent 31 years watching what happens when the people who can see decide it is not their place to speak. I know what that silence costs. I have read the files. I have sat across from the people who survived and the families of those who did not. My place was exactly where I stood. If you are watching this and something in this story feels familiar, I want to say something directly to you. The erosion is real. The way it happens gradually in small steps that each seem survivable on their own, that is not an accident. That is the design of it. And the fact that it moves slowly does not make it less serious. It makes it harder to see, which is why I want you to trust what you feel when something doesn't sit right. You are not dramatic. You are not overreacting. You are paying attention. Tell someone. Write it down. Let someone help you find the door. Your life does not have to stay the size it has been made. I want to thank you for spending this time with me today. If this story reached something in you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And I would love to know what part of this story stayed with you the most, and what city are you watching from?